All right, guys, welcome. If you are here, it is probably because you want to put on some monster size. So I put together a guide for you on how to bulk. This is specifically for enhanced guys. This is not for the natural. So if you're natural, don't waste the next, 30 minutes on this. But if you're enhanced, make sure to stick around. Whether you want to call it a bulk, an off season, whatever, it's probably the part of building a physique that people tend to fuck up the most. I mean, I did myself. Plenty of clients of mine have had shitty bulks in the past. It's almost become kind of taboo. You see a lot of content like, "Oh, bulking's vaulted, bulking's vaulted. You don't need to bulk. You don't need to bulk." Honestly, it's because most people suck at bulking. Probably 80% of people in the gym are terrible at it. And it's almost always for the same reasons. Most people fail because they start out with too high body fat. They think they're going to do it in 3 months, and that's all the time they give themselves. They'll do a 3 month bulk starting in January and expect to be like huge and shredded by summer. They took the wrong PEDs. That's a big one. I don't believe there's bulking and cutting cycles, but there are certain things that are actually going to hinder your progress more than help it when it comes to bulking. And probably the biggest one that a lot of people fuck up on is focusing on the scale over actual muscle tissue. Hey, I've been guilty. Especially like before I was 200 pounds, dude, all I wanted was for that scale to say 200. I didn't really care if I got fat getting there. I just wanted that number. And that's how a lot of people view their bulks. They think, oh, if I didn't put on 2 pounds this week, I'm failing. And they end up getting fat. A lot of people have heard the same eat big to get big shit regurgitated over and over and over and over again. And obviously, it's true to a degree. You eat a ton of chicken, rice, and olive oil, you're going to get huge. But if you're just thinking, I need as many calories as possible, so it doesn't matter if I eat pizza instead of chicken and rice, yeah, you're going to get fat. You're going to fuck up your bulk. You're going to hit a wall really fast, and you may or may not be able to salvage it from that point. And if you guys have done any of these things, you've probably ran into these consequences too. You got too fat. Obviously, no one wants that. No one wants to bulk up and, look like the fucking Michelin man. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is to put on muscle, but way too often it ends with people looking terrible. Destroying the insulin sensitivity. How many times have you guys been 2, 3 months into a bulk? Your appetite's already gone. You're eating more, but you're less pumped. Your strength starts to go to shit. Your training sucks. Life sucks. You feel tired all the time. It's because you fucked up your insulin sensitivity, which is probably the most important part of bodybuilding. And because of this, if you guys ran into this shit, you probably ended up putting on a quarter of the muscle you could have, maybe even less. And probably, I mean, we all know bodybuilding's a fucking expensive hobby, sport, whatever you want to call it. It's expensive as it is. So chances are, you're like, oh, I'm gonna do a big bulk, I'm gonna get huge. You probably ran a lot of gear. And you probably wasted most of that gear. That's money you could have put towards something else. It's a significant financial investment in your physique. And a lot of people have this inherent value in steroids because they get results, so they're worth the money. But no, they're a fucking waste if you don't put them to use. And how do I know this shit, guys? I mean, if you guys have been following me for a while, you watch all my stories, everything that I tell you guys not to do, it's generally because I've done it before and found out for myself how much it sucked. I used to, you can see right here, I used to get pretty chunky every time I went into a surplus. Yeah, is that chunky to most people, to your average person? Probably not, but let me zoom in a little. That's not a good look as a bodybuilder. Like, I don't really look big. I kind of just look skinny fat almost. Versus, this time I managed to actually do things right. And I put on around 55 pounds in 9 months without getting too fat. Actually, this week, my check-ins today is the first time I went, okay, damn, this is a little too far. And so guess what? Me and my coach cut it. After 9 months, we're going into a cut. But at no point during this off season until this week did I go, damn, I'm way too fat. I look like shit. Like, not even bodybuilder who would think I look good. No. Let me zoom in a little. This is a pretty decent look. I still have abs, still got some veins, look full as shit. It's not a bad look. It's, not how we want to look year round. Preferably I'd be shredded right now. But as you guys know, that's not going to happen unless you take the time to put on some tissue. You won't be shredded when you're lean if you're not big. You'll just be skinny. So I learned a lot of lessons along the way doing this year. This is the first bulk I think I've ever done right. Obviously, you know, I had slip ups. It wasn't perfect, but I'd say 95% on point, which is better than what it used to be for sure. But I'll be honest with you guys, there's definitely like a cardio session I might have skipped, or, you know, I think I missed 2 meals this whole off season, which not bad, but it's not perfect. But I learned a lot of shit this year, and I wanted to actually just share it with you guys. You know, I like to put out a lot of free content so that you guys can actually get value out of the things I'm saying, and I want to give you ways to apply them. So let's get into it. Prerequisites for a mass gaining phase. For you guys, you dumb meatheads who don't know that big word, what is a prerequisite? It's a condition that has to be met before you start that mass gaining phase. So let's get into it. The things I think you need to have in place before you start a mass gaining phase. So you should be under 12% body fat. Be realistic with yourself. You know, if you don't know body fat by looking at yourself, take measurements, buy some calipers, do something. I don't really trust like the in-body scans that much, but generally, how can you tell if you're under 12%? Well, you'll have decent, like pretty fucking good abs in the morning, even have good abs after eating. You'll have some like good vascularity in the arms and legs, maybe even the abs, depending on your genetics, you know, and that's without like blasting half a gram a tren. I'm talking about that's just what you look like. So if you're over that, you need to cut down first. You need to cut down, preferably, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm giving 12% as a high number. I personally myself would not start a mass gaining phase unless I was 10% or under. But, you know, not everyone's at the point where it's realistic for them to get under 10% body fat. It's a lot easier when you have the amount of muscle mass I have. Not to fucking jerk myself off there, but yeah, no, if you're over, cut down until you're ready. Spend 12 to 16 weeks cutting down before starting your mass gaining phase, or else you're just wasting your time. I have another video in the same playlist I'm going to put this in the bodybuilding education playlist called, I think it's called Enhanced Shredding, something like that. But that's a guide on how to cut down. So if that's you, close this video, go watch that. If you're under 12%, you're in a good place to start. So next, clean blood work. Yeah, that might come as a shock to some people, you know, especially if you like blasted like a motherfucker to get down to get lean enough to bulk. You might need a health phase before you bulk. I'm not saying everyone does, but if you come out of a cut and your blood work looks like shit, you're not in a good place to start a bulk. If your body's not healthy, it's not going to want to put on tissue. Like, think about it, guys. Your body has to do so many fucking different things to function, and putting on muscle is like the last of its concerns. So if your fucking kidneys are fried, you know, your liver's fried, you know, it's going to be hard to eat your food and you're going to get less results out of it. So if your blood work's clean, hey, now we can go into upping dosages into blast range, you know, to really get the most out of this mass gaining phase. And I also have another video on my playlist. It's called Managing Gear Side Effects, something like that. And that one has a lot of tips on how to fix bad blood work. So if your blood work looks like shit, close this video, go there. All right, proper mindset. Yeah, it might sound corny, guys, but let's be real. You know, I showed you pictures of my bulk. I didn't look insane. You know, I wasn't fucking striated everywhere. I didn't have ab veins anymore. Things I've all had in the past. But that's part of the game. When you're putting on size, you're going to get a little softer. I don't want anyone to get fat. That's not the goal, but you are going to get softer. So if you can't live without striated glutes and, you know, resting shredded abs the entire day, then you're probably not in a good place to bulk. You're probably going to give up. So if that's you, and, you know, you don't have that delayed gratification where you can know, oh, I'm going to get soft for 6 months, but then after that, I'm going to look better the next time I'm shredded. If you don't have that mindset, close this video. I don't have anything to help you. You're kind of a bitch. That's it. But if you are prepared to get a little soft for long-term results, you are ready to start a mass gaining phase. So let's get into it a little bit. Just a basic little graph on how this shit works. So clean diet, a realistic PED protocol, and intense training, and proper health and recovery. You apply that shit over 6 to 9 months, because that is how long a mass gaining phase should be. I'm sorry to blow your 3-month dreams out of the water, but if you do that over 6 to 9 months, you will get significant tissue gain. And I'm going to get into what those mean a little more, but let's talk about it a little. Clean diet. We're not going into this bulk doing the seafood, eat food method. You do not need In-N-Out burger after every workout. You don't even fucking Chipotle. Chipotle is not healthy. Get that shit out of here. You want to look like a bodybuilder, you got to eat like one. I'm sorry to tell you. Realistic PED protocol. What does that mean? Knowing what's actually required to get to the size you want. You are probably not going to get significant size on a mass gaining phase if you're scared to push your dosages up to bodybuilder doses. You're not going to grow on TRT. It's just not going to fucking happen. I'm sorry. So be realistic. Intense training. What does that mean? Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Train your face off every time you're in the gym. You are not going to put on size from food alone. I think the food's important, but I do agree with the science-based community on this, that training is the primary driver of muscle growth. If you're not giving your body a reason to grow, you're not going to grow. Simple as that. So if that sounds too hard for you, get the fuck out of here. Health and recovery. What does that mean? Well, there's going to be a lot of little things we have to do along the way to make sure we have a productive bulk and don't get to a point where we have to cut things short due to health issues, injuries, anything like that. But I promise if you guys follow this stuff, you can get really good fucking results. All right, so let's start with diet. Probably the single most fucked up part of a bulk. So let's start off with some stuff. This isn't going to be easy. By the end of a bulk, you generally just feel like you don't really want to eat anymore. And that is normal at the end. That should not be the case, a month, 2 months, 3 months in. This should be like the very end of your bulk, month 6 to 8 that you feel like this. It should not be like that in the beginning. So we want to avoid that. Where do most people kind of fuck this up? Well, they destroy their digestion. You're not going to be hungry when your last meal of the day every day is fucking cheeseburgers or pizza. You're going to wake up in the morning. You're not going to want to eat. It's not the same as when you're in a cut. That cheeseburger isn't going to refill your glycogen. Your glycogen's full. You're eating enough. You're bulking. So, how do we combat this? Well, what does every fucking bodybuilder eat? What's the stereotypical meal? Chicken, rice, and broccoli. That's what we're going to eat. Doesn't have to be exactly that. But your meal plan should be whole foods, pretty much exclusively. Chicken, potatoes, rice, beef, eggs, oats, cream of rice, fish, shrimp, just shit that is one single ingredient. For added fats, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, nuts, stuff like that. Butter if you're a grass-fed primal fucking one of those guys. As long as it is a single fucking ingredient, it is generally good in the meal plan. So with that, the one exception to that I'd say is, whey protein. I think a good whey protein isolate can be put to use. I think it should be a supplement to your protein intake, not the main source. I'm talking like 2 scoops a day tops. Unless you're like real deep in this shit, your food's crazy high. Like right now I have 4 scoops a day and my pre and post workout meals are cereal with whey isolate. But I've also been doing this for 9 months. It's part of the game. So with that, am I saying you need to cut out all the junk food completely? No. When you're in your off season, your bulk, enjoy it. 1 to 2 free meals a week, not cheat days, not cheat meals on top of what you're already eating. Free meals. What's a free meal? You replace one of your normally scheduled meal plan meals. Easy. So you're supposed to eat meal 6 as your last meal of the day. Boom, swap it for a cheeseburger 1 to 2 days a week. Should be able to do that without too many consequences. Hey, if it's fucking up your digestion, cut it out. You don't need it. If 2 is too much, go to 1. If 1 is too much, go to 0. You don't need it. Okay, next thing, calorie increases. Obviously, we're not just going to start with one meal plan and run it the whole bulk. Eventually your body's going to adapt. You're going to need some more food. So when we're doing that, Small calorie increases, guys, like 200 calories tops. I wouldn't do anything less than 100 because you can burn off 100 extra calories on a strenuous dog walk. So I'd say 200 is usually a safe number. And you want most of that to be carbs. Why? Well, that's really what's fueling your performance, which is fueling your muscle gain. A lot of people like to really run up the fats on their bulk. Some added fats are cool, but too much of it and your digestion will slow to a fucking crawl. You will not be hungry for your next meal if you're putting, 50 grams of fucking olive oil in a meal. And yes, guys, all of your cooking oil should be fucking tracked. If you didn't know that, I just can't with you. No, just stick around. You'll learn some more. All right, let's talk protein. So, protein. Every mass monster I've ever met in my life has had a protein intake over 300 grams a day. I would say if you are 200 pounds of body weight or more, I would be at 300 plus grams of protein a day. If you're under that, something like 250. Do I really have any science to back that up? No, it's mostly bro science where that number comes from. However, you're taking steroids. If you're not, you wouldn't be here. Those steroids are going to greatly increase your nitrogen retention and muscle protein synthesis rates. So you can do a lot more with the protein you're taking in. So if you have that ability, why would you not utilize it? I don't get it personally. So if you think 300 plus is a lot, well, probably shouldn't be bodybuilding. So get that through your head that is like the standard. Carb cycling. Let's talk about that. Kind of slept on for, non-competitive bodybuilders. So what does that mean? That means modifying your carbohydrate intake based on your needs. So what days do we actually need carbohydrates? Training days. That's the days we actually require carbohydrates. So on my training days personally, I would do high protein, high carb, low fat. You don't need a ton of added fats. You want your food to actually digest pretty fast on those training days. You don't want to eat your pre-workout meal and 2 hours later still feel full. You want to be able to eat it, hit the gym within an hour and a half, bust out that workout, and be able to eat again when you get home. So the high protein, high carb, low fat, it's going to move through you pretty fast. So that's why we do it like that. Rest days. So we don't need a ton of carbs on rest days. Actually, you don't need any technically. But the way I would do it on a bulk is high protein, moderate carb, low fat. I wouldn't, unless you gain fat super easily, I would not be doing like 0 carb days on a fucking bulk. That's kind of stupid to me. But why do we do this? Well, it is to maintain insulin sensitivity, which is essentially a measure of the amount of insulin your body needs to put nutrients into the cells. If you are super insulin insensitive, it's going to take a lot more insulin to essentially put nutrients into your cells. And the longer insulin is present in the bloodstream, the more fat you are going to gain. So we want to manage that. This last part, 1 0 carb meal a day if needed. If you're a guy who is not genetically lean, you put on body fat pretty easily, I would recommend either your first meal of the day or your last meal of the day, and I would choose this based on when you train, should be 0 carbs. So just something like, steak and veggies. This is going to essentially lengthen the window of time when there is like little to no insulin present in your body, because obviously there's not much when you're sleeping. You're not eating anything while you're asleep, so you're extending that window, which helps to preserve your insulin sensitivity. If you're like a hard gainer kind of guy like me, then I'd say that's probably not necessary. All right, peri-workout nutrition. What does that mean? Peri-workout nutrition, essentially that is the nutrition before, during, and after your workout. So what do we want to do to properly fuel our training? Well, before, we would want some carbs, a little bit of fat, just to, so your meal lasts you through your workout, but is not digesting during your workout. And then obviously some protein, but I would generally lower my protein intake from, what I do for my other meals. Like normally I do 8 ounces of meat in all my meals. Pre-workout, I would probably do something like 6. I don't want a ton of chicken having to digest in my stomach. Then intra-workout nutrition. This is really slept on, guys. You see a lot of people at your gym probably drinking an energy drink in the middle of their workout. That is a fucking waste. That's not doing shit for you. Pre-workout is meant, like the caffeine, that's meant to be pre-workout. Why they call it pre-workout. It's in the fucking name. So with that, what you should be doing is having some intra-workout nutrition. So what does that mean? So generally, it's going to be a pre-digested carbohydrate source. So something like dextrose, highly branched cyclic dextrin, something like that. A carb source that does not need to be broken down by the liver. It just hits your fucking bloodstream. And then you're going to want something like an EAA, BCAA, and then optionally you can do like creatine and glutamine in there. Generally, you'll probably want about 30 to 50 grams of carbs from this. And this is going to help you maintain intensity throughout the entire workout, and B, essentially start your recovery process early. And then post-workout nutrition, what do we want? We want no fat. We want a fuck ton of carbs, preferably fast digesting, so something like white rice, cream of rice. If you're really deep in the bulk, maybe cereal, and something like generally whey isolate. This is where I would utilize whey isolate too. It's extremely fast digesting. So you're starting your recovery process as fast as possible. I included an example meal plan right here. This is not designated for anyone of like a certain body weight or anything. I literally was just like, here's an example of some meals. So, hey, if you want to copy this and try it, go for it. It's a free plan. Take advantage of it. This is a training day meal plan. So, this is assuming you're training like probably around 10 o'clock-ish. So, wake up, have your meal one, pre-workout meal, intra shake, post-workout. Pre-workout, I generally do an hour and a half before my workout. Post-workout, I do within the hour of leaving the gym. And, you got the rest of your meal is pretty standard, meat and rice or meat and potatoes with some added fats. But pretty simple, guys. Like, this is the basic nutrition that every bodybuilder uses. You see, there's nothing fucking fancy. It's literally just eat whole foods, do it every day, don't miss meals, don't fuck with your meals. And if you do this every day, it's going to play out. The only time it doesn't is if you are skipping meals. Skipping meals is probably the worst thing you can do during a bulk, because your meals today, like my meals today didn't affect my training sessions today, but they're going to affect my training sessions for the rest of the week. The meals I ate the entire week previous, that's what made my training session today useful. So keep that in mind, guys. All right, probably what a lot of you guys are here for. PEDs and supplements. Let's talk about it. So the more basic you can keep an off-season cycle, the better. What is the goal here? Well, you want to be putting on sustainable tissue over the course of 6 to 9 months. If you can't make your cycle last that long, then, hey, you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage. So the simpler we keep it, the more side effects we can avoid, the better we can keep our health markers, the better. So here's how I do all my off-season cycles, same way for clients as well, for the most part. Cycles should consist of 2 to 3 compounds. So obviously you're going to have a test base. Testosterone, 500 to 1,000 milligrams a week. Anything less than 500, you're probably not getting what you need for the vast majority of people. I'll say there's exceptions because there are. Up to 1,000 milligrams. And is 1,000 milligrams really the limit? No, that's just, I'd say, what your general person can handle without in-depth coaching to help them avoid side effects and all that shit. So 500 to 1,000, that's pretty standard in the bodybuilding world. Let's talk about secondary compounds. So generally you should either have 1 or 2 of these in your cycle, depending on experience level, size. I mean, essentially what you need. I mean, if you can grow off just 1 extra compound, great, power to you. But if you need a little more, hey, you can always do 2. So you got EQ, Masteron, Primo, and DECA or DECA or NPP. Same dosage range, about 500 to 1,000 milligrams. So like my my off-season cycle for most of this off-season was 1,000 test and 800 EQ. So that's within those dosage range, kept it pretty simple. And for the most part, I didn't run into many steroid-related issues. I had some non-steroid related health issues that I had to deal with, like sleep apnea. I mean, that's just related to being 260 pounds. But as far as like steroid side effects go, pretty easy fucking off-season. Orals, let's talk about those. You don't really need them in the off season. I will say you can use them in short bursts. I'm talking 4 to 8 weeks, generally leaning more towards the 4-week side to break through strength plateaus. This isn't to look super freaky in the off season. What these are for is, okay, hey, my strength's kind of stalled out. I'm not making the logbook progress I need to put on muscle. Hey, let's throw in some Anadrol for 4 weeks, bust through that shit and keep going. However, most people probably don't need this because a lot of people are going to experience significant appetite suppression from orals. So, I mean, if me personally, dude, I won't even have liver toxicity. I will take an oral, and within a week, my liver values will still be perfect, and my appetite's gone, and my digestion's fucked up. So I don't even touch them during my off season anymore. I know that now. But if you can tolerate them and put them to good use, hey, that's how you should use them. Trenbolone, kind of the same idea. Tren is actually really powerful in an off season. I'd say it boosts strength more than most orals, if I'm going to be honest. But you're going to want to use it in pretty low dosages in the off season because you're already going to be a little fluffier than you would normally be. No need to add extra, cardiovascular strain from Tren. It can increase the heart rate a bit, all that. So I'd say 75 to 200 milligrams a week. And this is going to A, improve strength, and B, improve nutrient partitioning. If you've ever taken Tren before, it just pulls all the carbs out of your fucking bloodstream and shoves them in the muscles. Sometimes it makes you go hypo. Probably won't happen in the off season, but it's powerful at what it does. However, a lot of people run into pretty severe acid reflux with it and just digestion issues in general. So if that happens to you, it is not worth it during the off season. You need to be able to eat your food. That is the most important thing. If you are skipping meals and have no appetite, then hey, drop it. So next thing, HGH, human growth hormone. Honestly, I consider this mandatory now. I don't run a cycle without it, especially in the off season. This is going to help really keep your body composition a lot tighter as you bulk up, as you put on weight. It essentially shifts your body's metabolism almost completely towards athleticism. So where I would dose it, generally 4 to 8 IUs a week. Anything over 8, I'm not saying I haven't done it, but you run into water retention issues, some pretty severe carpal tunnel. So I'd say 4 to 8 IUs is my sweet spot. I used to be a pharmaceuticals only kind of guy. I use generics now. I think they're great. I think, past couple years, they've really increased their quality. So I've used that this whole off season. So I'm not even going to hate on generics anymore. You do what you can afford. If you can afford fucking 8 IUs of pharma a day, hey, good for you. You're doing well in life. Stick with that. But if you can't, generics are a perfectly viable option. But yeah, it really helps. Last bulk, I ran it without HGH. I got fat at 230 pounds. This time, I did it with HGH, 10 IUs a day. And I didn't get fat till about 260 pounds. So, pretty significant difference. Body composition stayed a lot better. What else we got? Insulin sensitizers. So this stuff is really going to help you keep insulin sensitivity during your bulk is going to be really important. Obviously, your food's going to have more to do with this, but these can just help handle the carb load you have to eat while you are bulking up. So apple cider vinegar. It's one a lot of people don't know, kind of a natural remedy side of things. Take a shot in the morning fasted. You will see a decent improvement in your fasted blood glucose. GDAs too, so berberine, it's glucose disposal agents, by the way. Berberine, Ceylon, cinnamon, chromium. If you can get all those wrapped up into one supplement, perfect. Take that with some of your high carb meals. It'll help you keep a lot better body composition, stay insulin sensitive. Low dose Retta, that's one I've been using this off season. I've been on 1 milligram of Retta, the whole bulk. I am not super sensitive to GLPs, so I didn't even really notice a dip in appetite. But if you are super sensitive to it, like I have clients who their first week on 1 milligram of Retta, they're like, bro, I can't eat my food. If that's you, if it nukes your appetite, not worth it. Ancillaries, obviously, I don't demonize AIs. I think if you can get away without them, do it. But if your estrogen's sky high, your whole bulk, it's going to be more fat gain, higher blood pressure, all that shit. So if you need AIs, take them. Take some Aromadex, take some Aromacin, whatever you need. Same thing with Cabergoline. If you end up running Deca or Tren, if you need it, take it. I'd say if you need more than 1.5 milligrams a week, you're taking too much Tren or Deca, so lower your dose. Blood pressure meds, ezetimibe for cholesterol, stuff like that, if needed, will really help your cycle. As I said, if you're unhealthy the whole cycle, you're not going to put on any tissue. Also, I apologize for the heavy breathing, guys. I'm 262 pounds, and I get out of breath doing pretty much anything right now. All right, guys, let's talk training. This is actually going to be pretty simple. What do you need to focus on for training during your bulk? You need to get strong. You need to get strong as fuck. It's probably the best way to measure whether you're actually putting on muscle or just, water, glycogen, and fat is, are you getting stronger and maintaining that strength? Not just like hitting a PR and then your strength goes down. Like progressively increasing your strength over the whole course of your off season. So a good strength standard that one of my old coaches taught me for, being a big guy in most gyms you go into: 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift. Generally, I mean, even with those as your maxes, you'll probably have some pretty significant muscle, preferably for reps. If you can hit those for like a 5-piece, you're going to be big in any gym you go to. I promise you. Now, if those aren't doable, obviously we all have injuries, limitations, mobility issues, stuff like that. I can't squat right now. My left knee is fucking torn to bits right now. No clue why. So I'm not squatting right now, like barbell squats. However, I'm still doing squat pattern movements. So bottom line, you need to get stronger at essentially 4 basic movements. Sorry, the air quality in Salt Lake is like the worst in the world right now, so I'm all fucked up. So these basic movement patterns. So a hip hinge. What is that? It's like a deadlift, RDL. You are hinging your hips. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to do both a barbell RDL and a barbell deadlift. You can. I've done it for most of my lifting career. But get strong at that movement pattern. Squat pattern, so that's going to be barbell squats, hack squats, pendulum squats, anything like that. You need to get really strong at pressing. So whether that's an incline press or a flat press, as well overhead press, if you got decent shoulders, get strong at those. That puts on a ton of upper body mass. And then obviously rows. I'd say row is probably the most underrated. I see a lot of people having barely any rows in their back days. It's probably why their back is really wide but flat as a pancake. You need to get really strong at rowing. Like if you can rep 315 on a barbell row or like the 150s on single arm dumbbell row, you'll have a big back. There's no way you won't. And your accessories. I think you should try and get strong at your accessories too. Now, obviously, are we going to be doing sets of 5 on a fucking lateral raise? I hope not. But you should still be focusing on progressing those lifts. I mean, one thing that I think if you want to get big arms, you should get really strong at, if your elbows can tolerate it, straight bar barbell curls, like with the actual barbell. Dude, when I used to have tiny biceps, and they're not great. I'm not going to pretend like they are, but they got a lot bigger when I was able to curl 135 for reps on a barbell. It's the same principle as any other muscle group. Get fucking strong. But guys, I'm telling you this because if your numbers aren't improving in one way or another, whether that's more reps, more sets, more weight, or even more control with the same weight, you're not putting on muscle. Your body would have no reason to. So unless you guys are in like the advanced stage of lifting where like you need to pre-exhaust or else you're doing like weights that are in like injury territory, structure your workout like this. So start with 1 or 2 free weight compounds. So, what are we talking about? A barbell row, single arm dumbbell row, deadlift, squats, bench press, incline bench press, barbell shoulder press, stuff like, or even like Smith machine shoulder press. Things like that are going to work a lot of muscle groups at once and do require a good amount of stabilization. So bang those out first. Then compounds. So, a hammer strength chest press, a fucking plate loaded row machine, something like that. Still works a lot of muscles, but doesn't require stabilization. So, you can keep loading that even after your big compound movement. So then obviously moving to the isolations at the end. I'm not going to be the guy to tell you like, oh, you shouldn't focus on the pump because it doesn't contribute to muscle gain. I mean, is that somewhat true? Kind of. But, it feels great leaving the gym with a great pump. So if you've already done, all your presses for the day, go bang out some flies so your chest is busting through your shirt. Power to you. When you're driving blood in there, what's in your blood? The nutrients from your pre and intra. Perfect. All right. General health, guys. So let's talk about this. Blood work should be done every 3 to 4 months. No negotiations. I talk to guys who say they can't afford blood work. Well, guess what? You can't afford gear either if you can't afford blood work. So fucking deal with it. Blood work should not be a once a year thing. It should not be every 6 months. It should be every 3 to 4 months. No negotiation. A lot of people say that and never give you the labs to actually check. So I'm going to tell you what I check every time I go in. So CBC, complete blood count. So that's going to have all your blood viscosity markers, your red blood cells, your platelets, stuff like that. CMP, complete metabolic panel, that's going to give you some basic liver values, kidney values, stuff like that. But those are what I call screening tests, not confirmation tests. They might tell you something is a little off, but it's not a guarantee that it's off, because your liver enzymes could be elevated on your CMP. But that could be from, you're taking orals, or that could be from, hey, I just destroyed my legs yesterday, so my liver is having to filter out all that waste my muscles created. Lipid panel, super important. What does that cover? Cholesterol. You want to keep your cholesterol in a decent range. If I'm going to be honest, guys, as steroid users, unless you're genetically gifted, you're not going to have the best cholesterol. But if you can keep it in range, you're golden. GGT is an advanced liver marker. Same with cystatin C. Essentially, so A1C essentially measures your average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 months. So if that's elevated, that means your blood sugar is chronically high, which means you're probably insulin sensitive. So this is one that's really important to monitor during a bulk. ApoB, this essentially tells you about the quality of your cholesterol. Two people could have the same cholesterol numbers, but only one of them might be at risk of heart disease. And that's a genetic thing, guys. So get your ApoB done. CRP, this is like it's an inflammation marker. It's pretty generalized, so don't freak out if it's high. Generally, if inflammation's high, it is not a good thing, but it could be from plenty of things. It could be from overtraining, it could be from bad quality oils in your steroids. It could be from too many sterilants and solvents in your steroids. It could be from being sick. It could be from a lot of things. However, it's an important marker to know. Obviously, full hormone panel test, estrogen, prolactin, free test, SBGH, all that, SHBG. Sorry, I always fucked that one up. All that stuff. Ferritin one, I want to make sure your iron's solid. I'm only throwing that in there because I ended up with low iron this bulk, which is pretty uncommon for bodybuilders, but it took me out of the game for a couple weeks. So pretty solid one to know. Another one you guys got to stay on top of is blood pressure and blood glucose checks. This is going to be super important for long-term health. What is the biggest killer of bodybuilders? It is high blood pressure. So if you leave that shit elevated and unchecked for a long time, you're probably going to experience some permanent side effects at some point. Blood glucose is another one. I check it. Honestly, I check it more than weekly, but I'm also on insulin, so that's something I have to do. But at a minimum, like if you have a check-in day every week, do a blood glucose check on that day. See what your fasted blood glucose is when you wake up. No food, no water, just wake up, take it. If it is above 90, get on top of your insulin sensitivity. You need to do something about that. Mobility, slept on one, 10 minutes daily. That's my rule. Whether that's some band work, some targeted kind of PT exercise, stretching, anything like that, foam rolling, anything like that is going to essentially help your body stay in the condition where you can train hard enough to actually put on tissue. If you get too tight, if you're getting imbalances, anything like that, it is going to affect the way you train, which affects how much muscle you put on. Body work, another slept on one. What is body work? It's essentially a sports massage. If you can find someone who specializes in bodybuilders, great. I would get that done at least once monthly. Hit a different body part every time. My back and my legs are generally what need it, so I get those worked on. I feel way better after. I feel like I have way better range of motion. I can feel the muscle better. Really important. Cardio. A lot of people stop their cardio when they're bulking. Bad fucking idea. I'm going to be honest, I used to do this every bulk. Probably I got fat really fast and my blood work was a lot worse. So I would never go under 20 minutes of like light intensity, steady state 4 times a week. I do 25 minutes 4 times a week. It used to be 5 days a week, but I would never go below 20 minutes 4 times a week. So what is light intensity, steady state? Want your heart rate between 120 to 130 BPM. So this could be like incline treadmill, biking. It can be essentially anything that puts you in that range. It can be fast walking around your neighborhood. I don't care. Just get it done. So guys, this shit fucking works. Here's some fucking hard proof right here. Got Adam, one of my clients. He 18 years old. So, every reason in the world not to be putting in the work. You could be doing so many other things at 18, partying, stressing about fucking life, whatever. But he decided, no, I'm going to look like a bodybuilder. He is up almost 40 pounds this year in about 6.5 months, which is pretty fucking insane. And I mean, look at him, dude. He's still got good conditioning, still looking pretty fucking solid. Obviously, a little softer, as you know, that's part of the game. But this is an example of like what a well executed bulk looks like. To fill you guys in, not once have I ever seen him report that he missed a meal. Fuck, he's probably taken 4 cheat meals this whole bulk. It's pretty insane. I mean, it's a little more on the extreme side, but hey, this is what happens when you take these principles I give you and follow them, because this is the same shit I have my clients do. I'm just telling you guys how to do it rather than help you do it. So I just wanted to give you guys some, reinforcement that doing all these hard things will provide results. That is a fucking guarantee. And the best advice I can give you, if after watching this video you can't figure it out, put a plan together, hire help, hire a coach. I do it. I have a coach, super helpful. I wouldn't have put on this much size without him. Every great fucking bodybuilder does it. Top level Olympians have a coach. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Like, if you think you know everything, you probably don't. If you think you know more than Chris fucking Bumstead, you probably don't. He has a coach too. So if you can't figure it out, hire help. Check out the rest of my channel. I got more videos that kind of build on this information and intertwine with it. I have a video on peri-workout nutrition only, just to go in depth in that and show you what that looks like. So thanks for sticking around, guys. Yeah, that's it.